Bear with me 1 second. There we go. And bear with me, folks. I'm just making sure everybody is going to be here with us and all together. We're going to have a great episode. I think it's going to be lots of fun, or at least very interesting for people who are not familiar with this. And I hope everyone gets a chance to answer. There's going to be a question that's going to be here with the entire event, and I just put that up. Do you trust government to have the right to, do you trust, there it is. Do you trust government with your privacy, safety, and family? It's a yes or no. It's pretty straightforward. And throughout the post, please do let me know if you agree or if you don't. I'm going to be looking forward to this. It's going to be a great episode here, and I'm just making sure that the sound levels are fine, everyone can hear, and waiting for people to jump on in so we're all together, and then we'll get started. And I'm just typing away here a message you'll see on Facebook very shortly. So for those who are just watching this on YouTube after the fact, you'll be able to see this. You'll be able to hear, and you should be able to see it as well. I just made a message to Facebook stating that this affects everyone, even if you don't own a firearm in New York State, even if you don't support the Second Amendment, this will affect you. Okay, so we've got that up and we've got that going. We're going to be starting. I'm going to give it another minute or so just to see everybody who jumps in, who's maybe around and speaking. I want to make sure the sound levels, everyone can hear me properly. You should be able to do so. Oops, and let me fix this in the background. All right, that should be good. I try and make it look as well. We try and make it look as professional as possible in our live little studio here. It's not the best studio in the world, but it is mine, and it is popular, or at least it works. I like it, and it works well for me. And we'll upgrade as money. If you want to help us upgrade the studio, improve the technology, improve the backgrounds, hey, donate away. I could use the money because I could use the help. It's expensive, folks. But I'm just waiting a moment. Just want to make sure we have a few people here. One of the things you may notice before we get started, as you see on the scrolling line, we do have, and we should be able to have live conversations as well. It's not a lot of phone calls that can come in, only one at a time. But, and please don't call yet. Give me a moment to get started, and then we'll get into it. But you will be able to call in, and we will be able to take your call live as you're speaking. Of course, you can always just type a comment in on Facebook. I'll be able to see it, and I'll try and respond as quickly as possible. I try to look for it as often as possible. And it may be a little delay, but I will answer any question. Remember, this is not just about me speaking whatever I think. This is a conversation that we're going to have together. Just like all of the Facebook's live simulcasts that we do here at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast, this is a conversation with the public. We're talking about the issues of the day, the things that matter to you, and directly, what do you think? And how do you think it affects you? And what do you think about this? And it's not all just about me. It's about a conversation, because that's how our government is supposed to work. That's how politics is supposed to work. We have a conversation publicly together, and maybe we agree, maybe we don't, but we try to work together to come to a consensus, the best answer we can that everyone or the majority of people can agree with, and have our representatives fight for that, and then we get the best laws that we can. That's the idea, and that's what this is about. It's a conversation between you and me and our politicians who do check this out. They do. I know. I've spoken to many of them over the years, and they listen. They check it out. They may not. They try to hide themselves very often, some of them, and they don't like to be very public about it, but they like to see what you're thinking and what's on your mind and what you think about the issues that they have to go back and vote on or to put in as a bill and try and get passed. So you always make a difference, and that's always important. So we're about 5 minutes in. I believe the sound is coming across fine. Everything looks good on the board. I'm just waiting for a response from one or two people. If anyone, just let me know. Let me know. Okay. Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Just ask people to give me a thumbs up on the volume. Make sure that everyone can hear me properly. For everyone who's not live or not on Facebook, you may not see this, so I just want to make sure everyone can hear and see what's going on properly. And I'm going to give it one more minute, and then we're going to start proper. And first of all, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I should have said that right off the bat. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I know a lot of people are out doing their Black Friday, Black Saturday, Monday, Cyber Monday, buying of gifts and food, and some people are doing a late Thanksgiving. So I understand numbers may be off on how many people are here, but I hope everyone does get to enjoy and does get to be involved and gets to see what's going on. So we'll be talking with all of you in just a moment. Just checking myself, making sure everything's looking right, and getting everything prepared to be able to take your calls as well. And I have another little bonus, a little benefit here. When we start in just a moment, I'm going to show you something brand new, something a little different than what most people may be expecting. We have a brand new intro, which you may have seen a poll on it on Facebook. I know Facebook suppressed it a lot, and so not everyone got to see it. It's a 26-second intro, and it's funny. The load time on Facebook for the 26-second video is longer than the video itself, which tells you something about Facebook and how well they like to hear other ideas, other viewpoints besides their own. They don't. If they happen to be conservative or if they happen to be Republican, they really don't like those ideas. They don't want you to have them, apparently, because they make it very difficult. I mean, it's a 26 second. But I'm not going to take any longer. We're going to get started here. I thank you for bearing with me as we get this started up. And with that, we're going to go straight into the opening montage. Please let me know if the sound is off, and then we're going to get started.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
There you go, folks. How was that? I like that intro. And for anyone who joins in late, I'm going to jump on that as well. We'll play it again a little bit later to get some feedback. Please do let me know if you like that intro, if it works for you, if there are ways to make it better or more interesting. We're always trying to improve here at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. And I am your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. Happy to be with everyone on this post-Thanksgiving podcast. And I thank you all. I thank you all from the depths of my heart, because you guys, you make it all worthwhile. You're the reason why I do this. And without you, well, there's just no reason to do it at all. So I want to thank you all for that. And I know that, and I said it just before in the intro, I wanted to wait a few moments, let some people catch up with us. But I did want to say again, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I hope everyone was surrounded by family, by love, by warmth, with food. And I hope everyone was thankful. I was thankful for the Constitution. I was thankful for my friends. I was thankful for having the ability to have a home and warmth. I've had many a day that didn't have any of these things. It's public knowledge that I've been homeless before, and it's a difficult time. So I understand what it is to be cold, to not have shelter, to not know if you're going to be safe, to be far away from friends and family. So I hope no one has had that experience this Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone will be well throughout the entire holiday season and always. That is one of the thoughts I always have. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about a bunch of bills, because I know everyone says, well, Mike, I hate politics. And, politics, the election's over, so no one needs to pay attention to politics anymore because it's all done. We elected people and there's nothing else to talk about in terms of politics. And I really wish that were true. I absolutely, positively wish that could be the truth, that we only had to pay attention to politics every election year from the summer from like June until November. That would be great. It's not reality. It has nothing to do with reality. And as I often say to people all the time, whether or not you're paying attention to politics, politics is always paying attention to you. And I do want to say hello to Michael Marshall. He joined in and he's listening in. Great. And Mike, just give me a thumbs up. Let me know that it sounds like everything's coming across 5x5. So just double check that for me. But, I wish politics were only, a 3-month thing, a small window of time that we had to pay attention to. But that's not how it works. Whether you're paying attention to the politics or not, they are affecting your life. They are absolutely going to change your life, whether you're paying attention to it or not, whether you voted or not. The politics are going to affect you. They always do. Whether it's in your paycheck, whether it's in being able to buy a car, buy a house, have a firearm, protect yourself, be able to have the ability to speak like I am to everyone out there. So this is what politics is about. And that's why it's imperfect. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that the volume's good here, Mike. And so that's why it's important. That's why it's critically important that we know what's going on and that we can have a conversation and that we let the politicians out there know what's going on. In case people came in late, I very often, I know for a fact, I speak to many politicians over the last 12 years, and I know that they listen in to programs like this. They check Facebook, they check Twitter. They see what people are saying about the bills that they propose and that they put in. You always have an impact. You always make a difference. And when people tell you your vote doesn't matter, they have an agenda. They don't want you to vote because they want to control the vote to get the outcome they want. You always have a voice. You always have control. These politicians are terrified, and they should be, of not paying attention to the people because you have the power of this government. We've gotten into this mindset that government tells us what's going on and what we should be accepting, and they're dictating to us. That's not how it works. It's exactly the opposite. They answer to us. I don't care what they think. They answer to us always. And we just always should remember that. So that's a little bit of a rant there. And in fact, I have a rant that I really want to go into. Because what we're going to be talking, what I want to start the conversation on, and you can always ask any question, you can always bring up any issue you wish, and we'll talk about it, because that's what this is about. It's about you, not me. I'm just the focal point, and I'll take the abuse and I'll take the attacks for everyone, but let's have a conversation. But I want to start talking about what just came out in the news. Before I do that, Michael Marshall mentions they want you to believe that they control you. We have to change this mindset in our country. And yes, Mike, you're right. I agree completely. We have to change the mindset that government controls us, or they tell us what are the laws and we have to accept it. We control that. We are the ones in charge of that. So I absolutely agree. But what I wanted to talk about today is after the election. Now, this happens every single year. Right after an election, all of a sudden there is this cliff dive of public attention in politics. Okay? As soon as people know who got elected, who didn't get elected, who's in charge, bang. It's a cliff dive and no one pays attention to politics because somehow there's this thought out there that, well, there's nothing else to do. And during that time period, between roughly November until January, when we start seeing the new elected officials come out and they start passing new laws and new bills, that's a dead zone. No one in the general public's paying attention. Political junkies, political commentators, news media, we pay attention, but everyone else is just, throwing it out their minds because you have the holidays. And I understand that and I respect that. But there's a lot that happens. And some politicians, knowing that the public is not paying attention, that they are not being held accountable, use this time to take advantage of the public. In particular, in New York State Senator Kevin S. Parker. I want to be very exact and make sure I give him credit because he likes to put that S in his name. Kevin S. Parker of the New York 21st State Senate District decided to take advantage of his constituents and the rest of the state by stepping in and putting out a bill that he knew no one was supposed to notice, that would pass by everyone without anyone mentioning it, so that he could pass it in January along with Governor Cuomo and the new Democratic-controlled state Senate. And a bill that affects everyone in the state. This is not just for gun owners. It's not if you just support the Second Amendment. Everyone in this state is affected by this, and I'm going to go into it in a second. And by the way, Mike Marshall mentioned that is one of the huge issues in this country, is the only time people care about politics is when the election is close. And you're right, Mike. That is when people care about it. But and the example is when people aren't caring about it, State Senator Kevin S. Parker put in a bill which says, and it's Bill S09191. So you can look it up. S09191. And he put in this bill, and essentially what it says is, if you own a handgun in New York State, you would, for you to either get the permit or to renew your permit, what you have to do is you have to give the New York State government all of your passwords to social media and give them access to your internet search, whether it's on Google or Firefox or Mozilla, that you have to give them your search for the last year to 3 years. Your internet searches, everything you've ever searched for on the internet for the last year, and every password you have to social media, that would be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that. You have to give them the passwords so they can look through it for the last 3 years. And if they like what they find in there, assuming that they haven't broken any laws and they don't find anything that is, quote, questionable, then they will give you a permit and you can have the firearm, or renew your permit so you can have the firearm. This is what he wants to pass under the idea that this will somehow make you safer. And that's what he put through. And no fanfare, did not have a press conference on it, did not put out a news release on it, didn't say anything about it, just put in the bill very quietly. Now, I should mention, the New York State Senate isn't in session. What that means is, from January to June, the New York State Senate meets and they pass all the laws and bills that are going to affect everyone. They pass the state budget, they pass all new laws and legislation and state funding. They do all of that between January and June. And the rest of the year, they're out supposedly talking to their constituents and finding out about bills. And they can always put in a bill to pass it in the future, but usually they don't. They usually wait until they're in session when everyone's there and they can all talk about it. He didn't. He knew no one was paying attention. He knew no one would notice this. He put that in so that this is something that could pass in January without anyone noticing it and affect 19 million people's lives. 19 million people. And luckily for us, people did notice. I noticed. A lot of people. He did this on November 14th. November 14th. And just so you understand, this is a reaction to what Governor Cuomo was saying, because it was November 11th that the news media picked up that Governor Cuomo was talking about, in several cases, that he wants to have more gun control. This is the red flag legislation I've been talking about since April of this year. Bills that would take away your kids, take away your firearms, take away your kids, possibly get you fired from your job. Legislation that is horribly, horribly flawed, as stated by assembly members who actually voted for the bill that I have interviewed, and you can look up the interviews for yourself, in particular Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo, Assemblyman Clifford Crouch. There's a Republican, there's a Democrat in there. They can tell you in their own words, when I ask them about it, how the law is flawed. But this is meant to be in conjunction with that. So the government would have the ability to show up at your door, take your firearms, and take your kids because you're too dangerous. And the way they can get there is to prove. How can they prove that you're too dangerous? Well, you went to get your license renewed, and they went through your internet, and they found something they didn't like. Now, this is very troubling. Very, very troubling. This is a problem. And it's a major problem because it affects everyone. Mike Marshall mentions, we have to remain vigilant even more so after the election, because that is when the newly elected representatives are trying to get their agendas passed. You're right. And this is one of those agendas. So again, I want to make sure people understand. In April of this year, the state assembly passed three red flag legislations. Okay. And these bills allow anyone to go, essentially almost anyone, to go up and, in particular teachers, a part-time, temporary badminton coach can go to the court, say your kid looks tired, and because your kid looks tired, they think it's abuse, they think it's because you have a gun, because they know you have a firearm. They can tell the court that. The court says, wow, that is dangerous, and the proof is you bought a hammer, a nail, a steak knife, a baseball bat, whatever. You bought something in the last 6 months. That's dangerous. It's called a dangerous instrument. And because of that, they give the police, the law enforcement, a warrant to go to your home. That's the day you get notified, is when they show up at your door with a warrant and say, we're going to take every firearm in this house, whether it's yours or not. And when they do that, they have to let Child Protective Services know, because if your home is so dangerous they have to take away your Second Amendment rights, they have to take away your kids. And they will take your children, they will take your firearms, you have broken no law, and then you get to spend a year proving you are innocent of no crime to get back your property and to get back your kids, which will cost you roughly about $20,000, take about a year or so. Not to mention your reputation is destroyed. That's what Governor Cuomo means when he says he wants to pass more gun restriction legislation, more gun control. He wants to be able to take away your firearms, and he wants to take your kids to punish you for having the Second Amendment. This law by Kevin Parker, State Senator Kevin Parker, is the proof for the red flag legislation. Remember, they have to prove. Someone says, well, your kid's tired, your kid maybe got in a fight in the schoolyard, maybe your kid doesn't test as well as other kids. This is, and the teacher knows, either because of Twitter or Facebook or just conversation, maybe the doctor says that you have a firearm in that home. That's the reason they're going to come and take your firearm under the red flag legislation, because you're not safe. The proof is because Kevin Parker's bill S09191 lets them go into your history in Facebook and find anything they don't like. And that is the proof. That is the proof that you are dangerous to yourself and the community, and they can take away all your firearms and your kids. So they're taking away your privacy, they're taking away your kids, and they're taking away your firearms. Is that crazy or what? Because I think that's absolutely insane. And no one's putting this together. No one's thinking about it, because very often the news media, and I hate this about the news media, the news media will go, hey, we're going to talk about this story. We want to talk about it only in this way. The news editor will shape the story so that it fits 30 seconds, even though it should be a far longer conversation. And he's going to limit and tailor the way the story is made. If they, and most news agencies today do support, they're against the Second Amendment. So they're going to find a way to frame the story as, this is good for you. This is a good thing. We're going to protect you. You're going to be safer. Isn't this great that Governor Cuomo is putting in more gun control? Isn't it a great thing that the state Senate under Democrats, along with the state Assembly under Democrats, are going to get more gun restrictions and get rid of guns, so you're going to be safer? That's how they like to frame it, in 30 seconds. And they always forget to name the bill, and they forget to give you the bill number so that you can find out for yourself, what does it actually say and what does it actually do? That's that thing. And that's one of my pet peeves, and I hate that. I hate that. And that's why, if you look at my sources, if you look in the information I put out there, I give you the way to find out the information for yourself so you can make your own decision, because I think you're smart enough. I think you're responsible enough. And I think it's an obligation of a political pundit and the news media to tell you the truth and say, here's the information, you make a decision. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. Here's what it is, you decide, because you're smart enough. You pay bills, you own a house, you take care of kids, you live your life. You're responsible. 99.9% of the population, 999% of the population are law-abiding citizens who do a great job every day of just living and dealing with the world. Yeah, you're responsible enough to know the truth. Why won't the media tell you the name of the bill and link to it? It's a big problem of mine. Because they don't want you to know. They want you to know their version of what's happening, taking you out of the control of what's happening, so that the only thing that's being said is what they want said, so they can pass what they want. That's essentially it. And I'm glad to see Frank Johnson has joined us as well. Hello, Frank. And please, if anyone disagrees with me, chime in, tell me you don't agree. I'll be happy to speak about that. So let me tell you where my rant comes from about this. So Senator Kevin Parker said this on November 14th. On November 18th, I became aware of it. 19th, I had a speech, and I wrote about it on the 20th. Okay, that was the 20th of November, as you can see, which includes the link to the bill itself and quotes from it talking about why this is a bad bill. Okay, and this is the actual bill, in case you're wondering. When you look it up, this is what you're going to see. And you can stop this. If you're looking at it on YouTube, you can stop the video and you'll be able to read what it says there, or you can go on to the New York State Senate section, which you see here, and you'll be able to look up the bill for yourself, okay? And so you get to find out what it is. And this is the problem. So he puts out the bill, and I am one of the few people, one of the first people to publicly talk about this as a member of the news media, minor as I may be. And I put out this story, and the response was insane. It was massive. It was a huge. Thousands of people saw this story and said, what's going on? How can New York State do that? Now, here's something that a lot of people don't know that pissed me off. I wasn't the only one who knew about this story. More importantly, I contacted many of my contacts in the news media and told them about the story and told them about the response from the public on this story and said, I can't reach enough people statewide at this moment. I wish I could. I wish I could say I have millions of people who follow me. No, I don't. I have thousands, but I don't have millions. And it needs to be discussed. If thousands of people are responding to this, to me, and this story that I put out and saying, Mike, this is crazy, how could they possibly do this? How could they take away our Fourth Amendment right? How can the government punish us for just being people? It's unconstitutional, and it is. When I talked to the news media and said, you should publish this, put this out, it's a bigger story. I can tell you two things that happened. One, no one touched the story for several days. Two, no one's giving credit to me and the handful of people who actually put the story out publicly and let people know about it. There's only 2 or 3 organizations that I'm aware of that actually put the story out. And most of us were suppressed by Google and Facebook so that it was harder for us to reach people to let them know about it, which is really a shame that people were denied the ability to know what's going on in their own government because Facebook and Google have admitted that they don't want conservative or Republican views out there, and they make it harder for people to find our comments because they don't agree with it, which is sad. So the news media actually waited around for a couple days until they started seeing, hey, the local news media guys, that local pundit, Michael Voss, no soundbites allowed, the M. Voss political commentary, hey, he's getting a huge reaction. People are very upset about this. People are talking about this on Facebook and Twitter. They noticed. We should actually do this story. And that's when you started seeing 2, 3, 4 days after the fact, over a week after the story came out, you started to see stories like this one. News legislation calls for social media search before pistol permit. Mostly true. WPIX, social media password. Search history could be required before buying firearm in New York. Could? No. Under the law, it is required, not could. Again, notice the difference there. Changing the words. Oh, it might be possible. It might be something. No, that's what the legislation says. It's not even a question. It's an absolute. And WHAM states New York State bill would review social media, internet history as part of background checks. Now, I point out all of these stories because not one of them mentions this, which is on the screen right now, the actual bill and what it actually says. The actual link to the New York State Senate so people can see what they're talking about. Not one major news media organization put that out there. I did. I quoted it, and I put the link in so people would know exactly what's going on. Because if I'm going to tell you something that's going to affect your life, you should know what it is. Not what I think it is, but what was actually there. Read the words for yourself. So that's a pet peeve of mine. Not only did the news media wait because they didn't want to talk about the story unless it had a lot of public attention. And once they noticed that it did get an enormous public reaction, then they decided to come out with their story, and they started manipulating the story. Oh, it could invade your Fourth Amendment. It might be a violation of constitutional law. It might be something that it could help people. It's there to protect you. That's when we get the news spin from news editors in 30 seconds in short little articles that don't tell you the truth. They don't tell you the complete truth, I should say. They edit so that they can get their message out, not what you need to know. That troubles me. So that's a pet peeve of mine. That's a major pet peeve of mine. And I know most of the news media, and it's sad that many of the news media still haven't covered this story. Do you want someone to see your internet history? And here's the thing about that really gets me. And a lot of people don't realize it. If I'm going for, say I'm a firearm owner, and you're going to say, well, I don't like the Second Amendment, I don't support the Second Amendment, you're saying to yourself, it has nothing to do with me, who cares? Take away the guns from those gun people. Okay, fine, you can say that. Here's something you didn't think about, that none of the news articles of the major media have ever touched on, not one. If the government can go into, if I have to give the government, quote, volunteer, unless I don't want my Second Amendment I have to volunteer to give them all of my social media access. So that means the government is now into my Facebook, my Twitter, whatever, and say you have ever clicked on any of my information. Say you've made a comment on anything I have ever said. You sent me a private message that was not meant for the public, ever. The government now has access to that. They now know what you said to me because they went into everything I've done for 30 years. And in particular for myself, that's a lot of stuff about politics on many levels, federal, state, local, delving into a lot of issues. And if you have ever made a comment, even on your own, you made a comment to me or you liked it, the government can now see everything you just did. You sent me a private message. The government goes into that. And they now have a record, which this bill does not mention, and no one in the news media has mentioned. The government has a record of everything you've just done. Who gets to keep that? What do they do with that information? How does the government use that information? That's a scary thought. Some bureaucrat or some politician now has your personal messages to me, and they can see everything you just said, and they can use that information however they want. They can abuse this information easily because you, as a third party, don't even know that they got it. Just because I own a firearm. And it could be even your neighbor. You could be talking to your kid's teacher. You could be talking to your friend on the bowling league, and you don't even know they own a firearm. And you've sent them messages back and forth for whatever reason, good or bad. And you don't even know they own a firearm. And the government now has access to everything you've ever said to that person you didn't even know had a firearm. And considering the fact that half the nation, 160 million people, own guns, over 5 million people in New York State alone, 1/4 of everybody in the state owns a firearm. You, if you're listening to this, have talked to someone who has a firearm, and very likely, because of the popularity, a handgun, which means that you are on record. If they pass this bill, if you pass Kevin Parker's state Senate bill, which will happen probably in the second or third week of January of 2019, the government's going to know everything you just said. They're going to know everything that you have said and every little idea you had, good or bad. And they're going to be able to evaluate it, and they'll be able to act and punish you for it. Think about that. You don't have to own a firearm, and this will just devastate you. Now, Michael Marshall mentioned a comment, and he said, and when you consider that some of us have friend lists that are pushing 5,000 people, and when you consider pages and groups that are adminned, then that reach becomes even larger. You're absolutely right. Any group that you're in, if I'm in a group, if I'm a firearm owner, whether you know it or not, and I'm in a page, oh, I know, the Binghamton used furniture page, okay, or the Binghamton Broome County garage sale page, and you're on that with me, and for whatever reason you decide to have a conversation with me about anything, has nothing to do with firearms. You're talking about garage sale, or I don't know, teapots, or your favorite coffee, or your favorite band, or where you go to have a beer, or you're looking to date someone. Okay, any of those reasons, because you're on there on Facebook with me as a firearm owner that you didn't know about because it never came up in conversation, the government now knows all of your information. They're digging through your page and your social media and everything you've done, trying to determine, are you a terrorist? Are you someone who said something bad? Because part of the terms of the bill is if you say something that is not PC, if you didn't use the right words to describe someone's gender, their sex, their sexual preference, their race, their religion, their nationality, if you've ever made a comment that might be questionable to a PC viewer or someone who has a certain political viewpoint, then you're in trouble. They're not going to have access, and they can use this information because you had to volunteer it because you want your Second Amendment right. Think of how much that, think of your kids and everything your kids have ever said, ever done. They can use Snapchat. That's also in there. Every picture your kids have ever shown. You have a picture, and think about this. How crazy is this? Think about it. If you're talking to me and you have a picture on your page of your kid as a baby, you have a newborn, and you have a picture of your baby, and many people have taken pictures of their kids as they're changing their diapers or if they're just laying there naked, because parents do that. My mom has a picture of me when I was naked as a newborn laying on a bed. It was a great picture. I love it. She still has it. And she shows it to people all the time, much to my embarrassment. But, we've all been through there. You know what that is? That's child porn. If you share it on the internet, that's child pornography because I'm a baby and I'm naked. Someone can say that's child pornography and therefore destroy your life because you shared someone's baby pictures. Under the definitions of laws right now, is that common? Do people do that all the time? In terms of sharing it? Sure. Does the government prosecute it all the time? No, but they can, especially if you have something like the red flag legislation that says, oh, see, this is a dangerous person. They're sharing pictures of a baby. Yeah, it's your baby, or it's maybe you. Yeah, you're sharing a picture of a baby. Well, that's a dangerous person. Something's wrong with them. That's a red flag. Therefore, we have to take away their guns and we have to take away their kids. And people say to me, Mike, you're just... That's a conspiracy. It can't possibly happen. Really? Read the bill. Let me put it up here again. Read the bill. Read the bill and then tell me that I'm doing a conspiracy. It's not. Just because it sounds awful doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means the bill is bad. It's dangerous. It is an overreach of government. It is absolutely terrifyingly dangerous to your Fourth Amendment rights, to your Second Amendment rights, to your Fifth and 15th Amendment rights, which happen to be due process for those who are not familiar with it, and your First Amendment. This is the ability to chill, to silence people so you cannot talk. That's terrifying. Mike Marshall mentions, what an easy way to silence someone that is against your political positions. Exactly. This is a way to control people, to silence them, to scare them, to bully them. You lose your First Amendment right because if you talk to me or if you talk to anyone, half the population of New York, of the United States, 1/4 of the people in New York State, and you're talking to someone, well, you have to be afraid because they may own a firearm, and therefore, under this law, if it gets passed, the government now has a right to look at everything you have ever said to them privately, not even publicly, privately, and they can act on that in any way they want. And if they couple that with a red flag legislation, that kind of law that says we just need to believe you could be dangerous to be able to punish you and destroy your life because we don't like it. Governments do not have that power. A government should never have that kind of power. That kind of power should never be implied for a government to have. That's why we have a constitution that limits the power of the government. The Constitution does not limit a single thing you and I as human beings can do as Americans. It does not limit anything. It limits the government and what the government can do, especially what the government can do to us. All of the power in the Constitution, in our government, are with us, not the government. That's what the Constitution is there. The right to privacy is not something the government gave us. It is something we have absolutely, and the government can only ask for it, which is why Kevin Parker's bill is unconstitutional. 2 reasons. 1, we have already seen the Supreme Court decide in the Heller decision, Heller versus D.C., that we have a constitutional right to have a handgun. The government cannot stop that. Therefore, since that is an absolute right of ours, according to the Supreme Court recently, then you cannot say that I need this decision, this invasion of my privacy, that the government cannot do unless it was voluntary, quote unquote, because you're volunteering. under duress, because if you don't do it, you don't get the license. So it's a duress, which is illegal in New York State. Duress, that I believe that would be a class 2 violation of intimidation. So there it's illegal because it's duress. 2, it's illegal because it's unconstitutional, denying your Second Amendment rights. It's an invasion of your privacy. There's another constitutional problem. So there's a bunch of problems with it right there. And the way it's used is to further punish people for not committing a crime. Again, all of this is happening to you. You've never committed a crime. You've done nothing wrong. Like 99% of the 160 million people who have firearms right now, today, they have 350 million guns minimum in this nation, more than every man, woman, and child in the nation, which has been historically true since roughly the Wild West ages. There are more guns and people with guns than most of the population, and everyone's fine. That's terrifying. That should terrify people. That should really scare people. Mike Marshall mentions, use child pornography laws to silence you for sharing your children's baby pics while they are in the bathtub. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And that is a justification under the red flag legislation, which I have done bills on. I've done a lot of articles on that. I believe, where's that? Nope. Did I change it? Yes, I did. Okay. I thought I had the red flag legislation there. I've written, please go to the MVOS website or the VOS political commentary, and you'll be able to see all the information. I link over 150 sources talking about red flag legislation. In fact, I have one of the most comprehensive reports on red flag legislation in multiple states and what it can potentially do in New York State. I invite you, please look it up. You don't have to agree. Find out the information. I list 150 sources, including the state of Connecticut and Indiana, all of the studies that have been done on the red flag legislation that has been in existence for over a decade, whether or not it actually works or not, and has all the stats. You can look it up for yourself and take all the time you want and make your own decision. But we are looking at an onslaught against our freedoms and everyone that we know, whether or not they own a firearm. And it will take away your kids. It will take away your privacy. It will take away your freedom. It will affect your job and your ability to make money, and will persecute you simply for being an American. That is not some kind of conspiracy theory. I know a lot of people like to say it's a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. That's why the major news media is writing about this. Again, the major news media is talking about this. There you go. There you go. Okay. There's another one. There you go. Okay. That's not me. That's not a conspiracy theory. That is the major news media picking up on a story, but they're not telling you the consequences. They're not telling you what's happening. They're telling you a spin on that. And that should terrify people. Now, Mike Marshall mentions this could also be another way to attach fees for the social media searches that would make it even harder for lower income people to obtain permits needed to obtain the tools needed for self-protection. This form of discrimination against those of lower income. Well, Mike, you're right, but think about it. The entire system is built, the idea of permits to own firearms is built against those of lower income, whether you're a minority or not. The idea is you can't afford, especially in New York State. This is another form of control. It costs over $600 to get the fingerprints and to put in the application fees, all of it non-refundable, $600 to be able to get a permit to have a firearm in New York State. How many people who are living in low income have an extra $600 to put in an application that they might get denied for, especially because of any reason, like their internet history, their Twitter, their tweets, their Instagram photos, or because of their searches on the internet. Think about it, people. I know no one has ever used the internet to search for porn. That just doesn't happen. It's the biggest industry in the world, and it's the biggest industry on the internet. It makes more money in 1 year than every major movie. Actually, the entire Hollywood movie industry makes less money than the porn industry every year. Every year. On the internet. Always. Porn makes more money than everything else. But no one has ever searched for porn in their life. But imagine that the government now has the ability to do searches, to go in and read every search you've done. And let's say by accident, you're doing a report on Pandora's box because you're a student and you're doing something on Greek mythology or on mythology in general, and you happen to be looking at Pandora's box, and you don't have your safe search option on in Google, and you're looking for a picture to put into your report, and oh my God, you get porn by accident, because no one in their right mind would actually search for it. They now have the potential to say that look at this, we found this pornography on your search, you are a sexual deviant. We will now label you as a sexual deviant, begin an investigation on you, which would be public, to check on child pornography, destroy your life, destroy your career, destroy your potential relationships with people. And we're going to do this because you also happen to be a Republican or a conservative or a libertarian or even a Democrat that's not a progressive. Or you're just someone who didn't agree with everything that they want you to agree with. Do you see how dangerous this is? And people say, well, Mike, it doesn't happen like that. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because if it didn't happen like that, guess what? I would not have been the first person in the news media, one of the first news pundits. And actually, I believe I was the first news pundit out there and member of the press that was talking about this issue. I was one, if I wasn't the first, I was one of the first. And according to the searches that I've been able to make, I didn't find another news agency out there that covered Kevin S. Parker, his state bill S09191. No one else covered it before me. No one that I could find. Not saying they didn't. I'm sure there are others out there that did. They deserve credit as well. I'm not trying to hog the credit. My point is, if the news media was really looking out for the public, they would have announced it first. I would have been talking about their research, not them talking about mine, and not doing it as well as I did. That's the thing. That's why you should be very, very concerned, because the news media at this moment does not have your best interest at heart. So that these are a couple and I know it's coming off like a little bit of a rant, and it's a pet peeve of mine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break just so I can have a sip of soda here. And then I'm going to come back, and as you may have noticed, there's a phone number down there. Please, when I come back from the break, I'm going to show you the new intro. We'll play that again. But also, I want you to be able to call in and talk to me, and we'll put you on live, and you'll be able to hear, and everyone will be able to talk about this. I'm more than willing to take comments and to speak about. And also, before I leave, let me also mention, Mike Marshall mentions that this is exactly my point. Yes, we've been talking about a lot of things that we both agree on. Mike also goes on to say, what about people that do research for information for college papers? Yes, or newspaper stories, or many other reasons. You and I write informational articles to educate the public about various issues. The research forces us to search for information that is related to issues that would be considered disqualifiers for a permit. By the way, for people to know, Mike Marshall is a member of the Liberty First Foundation. I am also a member. I am the New York State chairman of our chapter. I run that chapter. Mike runs the national. And he's correct. We do. Many people write articles, and he's correct. Any of those things can lead you to a search to find. In writing my article about this issue, I looked up the Pandora's box, which may bring up, and did bring up, which is the reason why I'm mentioning it, brought up porn that I was not intending to have on my computer, but now it's there, and now that's it. I've talked about Mein Kampf, and again, someone could be doing research for a school paper or for a newspaper article, and you have that, and you searched it because you didn't know how to spell Mein Kampf, and you searched it to find that out. Now you have a search for Nazism on your computer. Does that make you a Nazi? No. But can someone claim that if they want to deny you a permit, and that is public record, and that can affect your life? Yes, they can. Again, these are things that happen that are absolutely insane. And as for Frank, yeah, Frank, soda. Yeah, I drink soda. I drink coffee. Actually, it's coffee, but whatever. Most people don't drink coffee in the middle of the day. I do. But with that said, let me take a moment. I'm going to bring up this little break, and then we'll come right back. And again, the phone lines will be open at that point. You can call in. I'll be happy to speak to anyone live, or you can just type in on Facebook. I look forward to that as well. So we'll be right back in just one moment.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
That's right, folks. That is the new opening. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I hope it came across with volume. It sounded like it did on my side. But that was a little bit of a break, and I thank you for that. And as I promised, the phone line is now open. If someone wants to call in and talk with me and tell me that I'm wrong, please do. Or maybe you think I'm right. or maybe there's something that I missed in this and you want to discuss it. More than happy. You can also leave a comment here on Facebook, or if you want, you can even tweet me. And I should have put that in, but maybe I will. Actually, I'll put that in just a moment. Let's see if I can get this done while live. Yeah, I think I can. I'm just going to put in my Twitter handle for those who are looking at the video. You'll be able to comment on Twitter as well. Oops, can't even spell it anymore. And that is my Twitter handle, which is MV Consult. Very simple, very easy. Oops, no, there we go. All right, messing with it. There it goes. So you should see that show up as well. So you can also comment on Twitter. And I should have put that in the first place, but there you go. So yes, we're talking. You can call in. You can leave a tweet. You can comment here. And I will probably be talking about this tomorrow on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, which is MV Consulting Inc. INC. So I'll be doing that live there as well. I try to do is reach as many people as possible. It's a new thing, and we're still working on the YouTube version, but I think it's pretty good. So picking up where we left off, and in a lot of, I know one of the first things people say is, Mike, this is a conspiracy. This is, it's you're out of your mind. And I've had actual Second Amendment agencies, organizations that I've contacted on this, that I contacted immediately on the story as it was gaining so much steam. And there was so much of a public response. And I had reached out to a couple of organizations, national organizations, and asked them as well as local, and said, hey, this is an important story. We should talk about this. You guys can reach far more people than I can. This needs to have more attention, like I did with the news media. And I had a couple of them actually come back and go, well, don't worry about it. These kind of bills happen all the time, and they don't pass. And people have told me that personally, Mike, you're overreacting. It's not possible. It's not going to pass. No one would ever pass that. And I have to address that because it's built on this misconception that a lot of people have. And I've seen this within the Republican Party. I've seen this within the conservative and libertarian parties. I've seen it in Democratic parties where people say, well, Mike, you're wrong. This can't happen. It's never going to happen. It's too crazy. No one would take it to that extreme. And the answer is, in New York State in particular, why didn't it happen in the past? Because there was a Republican state Senate that wouldn't allow it to pass most of the time. Because a lot of people said exactly the same thing about the New York SAFE Act, which I've written about. In fact, in December of 2012, literally about 2 weeks before the New York SAFE Act passed, I have a YouTube video of me talking about how we're going to see regulations, or we could potentially see the regulation or criminality of owning a screwdriver or a steak knife or a shotgun, which I had in the video, and saying that this instantly turns people into criminals overnight merely by having a possession of something that someone in government did not like. Now, I was wrong about the time frame about the steak knife or any of the other implements because we're seeing it now. That was 2012. In January of 2013, we saw the New York SAFE Act pass under a Republican state Senate. So they allowed this to go through under the idea that people would be safer. And now, in 2018, we're seeing people try to pass red flag legislation that they've been trying to pass since 2017, but now it's popular. And this will allow, because of that steak knife that I may own and may have bought, or a baseball bat, or a screwdriver, or any other quote-unquote undefined dangerous instrument, I can now have all my firearms taken away. I can be publicly ostracized. I can have my reputation destroyed and punished without ever committing a crime. That can happen. It does happen. And that's even with Republicans who disagree with, or supposedly disagree with, Governor Cuomo and many of his progressive policies. And I'm sure Citizen Action and Antifa love this stuff because they don't think it applies to them, but it does. And it's just as dangerous. And it's insane. It's insane. So this is a very troubling thing. And when people say, well, you're just going out of your mind, you're far too, it's not possible. It's always possible. When the public isn't paying attention and there is no repercussion to any of the politicians, it is always a possibility. And we've seen it in history time and time again. When the public isn't paying attention, abuses of power become rampant, and anything is possible. Mike Marshall mentions, and Mike's very popular today. But by the way, folks, anyone can comment. Anyone can call in. This is open. It's me talking a lot, but it's a conversation. If you don't agree with me, tell me. There's nothing wrong with saying I don't get it or I'm missing something. Maybe I am. Tell me if you think I am. Point out something that I've missed, whether it's in agreement with me or against me. I'm not God. I don't know everything, obviously. But, I can't know an objection that I missed if you don't tell me. I can't learn and become better if I don't know what you're thinking. And more importantly, politicians who are paying attention to this, they do follow this. They do listen to what people are saying to me. Let them know whether you agree or disagree, or if you think there's something that can make it better or worse, or something that you're afraid of that I haven't mentioned. But that said, Mike Marshall mentions this bill has the best chance of passing in the legislative session than in any other. We have very anti-Second Amendment representatives in the state of New York. Both the Assembly and the Senate are very anti-Second, as is the governor. The governor has already said that he will further gun restrictions this legislative session. Yes, he did. He's been saying that since June, actually even before then. But June in respect to the red flag legislation and now with this. And you're right. This is the most likely time that we're going to see the most progressive gun restriction legislation, gun control laws being passed. Laws that affect anyone and everyone that owns a firearm. And it's meant to either get you out of the state, as 1.2, maybe 1.5 million people have already done, or if you stay in the state, to suppress your rights and your freedoms and those of everyone you know. And, while everyone, and maybe 5 million gun owners in New York State leave, that's quite possible. That doesn't help the people who remain. And that's one of my concerns. Because this is not just about firearm owners. It's about everyone. It's about your kids. What are they being taught? Are they being taught that you have control of the government or the government has control of you? Are they being taught that they have freedoms that are inalienable? Or are they being taught that they are alien to their rights? Are they being taught that they have control of that government or the government has control of them and what they can say and what they can do? Because it all ties together. So look at the kids, look at the families, how this is potentially a way to control families, to put fear into people, to restrict people from their freedoms, and to limit and say that the government can tell you what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot say. How dare they? How dare they and proclaim that they are looking out for our safety? And I want to address, I haven't addressed the safety issue. Let me address that. A lot of people say, well, this will make everyone safer. That's always the answer. We're doing this to make you safe. We're going to protect you. We're going to help you. You are going to be able to sleep at night. And that is a lie. That is a crock, quite simply. And let me debunk that very quickly and easily. How many criminals in New York State, if not the nation or the world, get a firearm license from the state so they can go commit a crime? I think that's an infinitesimally small percentage. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm telling you that it is incredibly small. In fact, for all the criminals who are repeat offenders, violent offenders, whether that would be rape or mugging someone or bank robberies, I am unaware of any of them, and I don't know what the stats are, and I don't think anyone's done the stats because it's such a stupidly low number of these individuals who try to violate the law, to ask for a permit so they can have a firearm. They are by law not allowed to do so because they are violent repeat offenders. They aren't getting a permit. You're not protected from any of them. Most criminals, because they don't want to get caught, do not register an illegal firearm, or rather a firearm legally, so that they can be traced back to them and they go to jail. Most of them have illegal firearms that they own without permits because they are illegal criminals. They are acting against the law and they don't want to get caught and punished. So they're not in this group. We are not making anyone safe from criminals at all. The criminals are not out there getting registered. You're not protecting anyone from that. So you're not safer from criminals because they're not involved in this. Let's also address the question about the deranged. People who are crazy, and I know it's not a good word to use, whatever, they're crazy, okay? We're talking about vile, evil creatures that go out and commit things like mass shootings. They aren't stopped because of a permit. They will either buy firearms illegally, which we have seen, or they will use a different weapon, which we have seen. They have used cars, they have used bombs, they have used box cutters, they have used knives and swords. They go out and use other means. Just because they don't have a firearm, which may be effective, doesn't mean other things aren't as well and that they don't use them as well. Our recent history is filled with many, many cases of this happening. You are not safer because a law says you shouldn't do that. Because if the law was effective by itself, murder is illegal. Stop. You don't have to go any further than that. It doesn't matter how you do murder. Murder is illegal. If all criminals followed the law and didn't break the law, we wouldn't have murder. Period. So to tell me that you're going to take away a firearm and therefore no one is going to get killed with a firearm is idiocy. By definition. We don't need a law against firearms to protect people from mass murders if no one is committing murder. The fact that someone is committing murder means that laws by themselves do not protect people. And if we are looking at this properly, this law affects law-abiding citizens who have not committed a crime because no one's being arrested for your internet history. No one is being arrested because of a red flag violation. No one gets arrested in these cases. And I can say that because I've looked at the studies by Duke University and the University of Indiana, and very simply, they have found that almost no one in thousands of cases gets arrested. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't even protect people against suicide. It doesn't. University of Indiana, 1 out of 20 people. You have to take away the firearms from 20 people to potentially save one person who 40% of the time will still commit suicide within the next 2 years, just with a different means. So you're not protecting anyone. You're not saving people's lives, not from themselves, not from others. It doesn't happen. That is a lie so that you can sleep well at night knowing that you have less freedom than you had the day before, that you have given the government more power over your life than you did before. And it's one of those sad kind of things that people realize the second it's happened. Remember David Hogg? David Hogg from February of 2018 was screaming right after the Parkland shooting, was out there saying, we need more government protection. The government has to come in and protect the kids. We have to be protected. So the government immediately reacted because it was very emotional, and they said, we're going to protect Parkland. And they had helicopters flying overhead. They had dozens of police in the school and around the school, especially when kids were coming in and out of it. And the first thing, they made them have clear backpacks. And the very first thing that was said immediately after that happened is David Hogg came out and said, "Oh my God, the government's oppressive. How dare they restrict our First Amendment rights and our Fourth Amendment rights? How can they just invade our privacy like this? How can they restrict us like this? The government doesn't have a right to do that." Well, you just asked them to do that. You just gave the government power, David Hogg, and those who are against the Second Amendment, and those who agree with Kevin S. Parker, and those who agree with the red flag legislation. You're asking the government to get more power and to be invasively in your life, controlling what you do and do not do. And when it does that, as it did to David Hogg in Portland, Florida, you're going to go, "Oh my God, how can the government be so oppressive? That's wrong." Well, you're asking for that. That is the result. That is the goal. That's not a conspiracy theory. Look it up. David Hogg, March 2018, about the government oppression and the clear backpacks. Look it up. It's there. His own comments, his own words. But and none of this makes anyone safer because crazy people do crazy things. Criminals don't follow laws. That's why they're criminals. All this does is control law-abiding citizens negatively. But I know I have a comment here from Mike Marshall. Mike says, FBI studies have shown that when gun ownership goes up, violent crime goes down. The CDC conducted a similar study and came to a similar conclusion. One FBI study showed that when a gun owner, when a gun owner, there it is, was present during a mass shooting event, it stopped 94% of the time. Taking guns makes us less safe, not safer. That is also, I've read many of those, the data, and I don't have the links for that. But yes, I've seen, and I've done articles, and people can look this up. I believe How Safe Are We Anyway, I believe was one of the articles that I did. You can look it up. Just look up gun legislation or gun restriction legislation or gun control on the mvos.com site. And I have several studies, and I've looked into it from the CDC, the FBI's Crime in the USA data, the New York GIVE report, which it comes out annually on 17 metropolitan New York locations. I've compared Illinois, Chicago, LA, California, Connecticut, New York State, Florida, Washington, D.C. I've done that. I've looked at the data constantly, and I invite people. I've put up the charts. I've put up the links. You don't have to believe me. In fact, I insist you don't believe me. Go look it up. I have links to all of the sources in every one of the articles that I have done on this. Look at the studies by Professor James Allen Fox out of Northeastern University. Look up this information, and you will see repeatedly, constantly, in no way, shape, or form does taking away a law-abiding citizen's firearm make anyone safer. No one is ever safer. None of the numbers change. The number of crimes, violent crimes, murder, do not change whether the law-abiding citizens have more or less access to firearms, although in many of the incidents, like Mac mentioned, if there is an incident, they are more likely to protect themselves and stop an incident than if they are unarmed. And I'll look at it from an entirely different point of view, because I know the women who follow this, and I know my numbers skew towards men mostly, but for the women out there who look at this, let me just mention to you. You're going home one night. I know many women. Some of my friends, they work in bars. They're bartenders. I know some are waitresses. Some women just work very long hours in various fields in government and so forth. And they're coming home one night. You're driving down the road or you're walking home. It's night. It's dark because it's the winter, so it doesn't even have to be late. It could be 7, 8 o'clock at night. And you're by yourself and your car breaks down, or you're just walking down the road, and some individual that has a bad intent sees you and decides they want to rape you. And this person is coming after you. And let's say if you're the average woman, you're about 5'3", 5'4", you weigh about 150 pounds, and this individual outweighs you by 50, 80 pounds. And let's say that individual is about 6 foot tall. This is a bad situation. Not to say that a woman cannot fight. I am not saying that. I'm not saying a woman cannot defend herself. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in terms of weight and just size, a woman is suddenly at a disadvantage. Even if she does know martial arts, even if she's an expert boxer. I'm sure there are many women out there that can beat my 50-year-old butt. I'm not saying that they can't. I'm saying that there are situations, and they happen because we know the feminists have constantly beat upon us the rape numbers in the nation. Obviously, there is a problem. And in that scenario, amongst many others, would you, if a woman has the option to protect herself with a firearm, which would help her in that situation, imagine that you are being denied, you as a woman are denied the ability to have the option. I'm not even saying it's a requirement. I'm saying you have the option to be able to carry a firearm, be well trained in its use and how to handle a firearm, but a well-trained woman familiar with a firearm is denied the opportunity to have that protection, that option of protection from rape and possible murder, because on your Facebook account you saw this video, because you were on YouTube and you watched this video, because you did a search on Pandora's box or furry slippers, and you, because a porn may have shown up on that search because you didn't do a safe internet search, you will be denied. Because someone may know that you're a firearm owner, a teacher of one of your kids, a friend, a neighbor, someone in the bar, anyone could know that you support the Second Amendment, and because of that will drag you will go into a courtroom. They won't even drag you there. They will go into a courtroom and they will say that you are dangerous. You as a woman are dangerous simply because you own a firearm, and the government will take away those firearms, potentially increasing the odds of you being raped and or murdered. Would any woman agree with that option? And we're talking about women who fight for the right to have a choice. This is choice being removed from every single woman without your consent, without any care or concern about your safety. I want to see all of those progressives, the far left, the women's groups tell me that they want to deny women the option to be able to protect themselves with a firearm because women will be safer without it. Please make that argument to me. I want now National Organization of Women or any of the other progressive women's groups to come up and tell me and explain to me how women will be safer by being denied an option. I'm not even saying that they have to do it or that every woman is required to do it or be trained. No, to have the option. These progressive organizations are fighting for women to have options, and you are talking in this law, in this series of laws on gun control, they are talking about taking away the option from women. You will be denied that choice, period. You can't do it. And that's supposed to make women safer. As an example of what I'm talking about, this makes no one safer at all, ever. It's aggravating to me. It's aggravating. But again, folks, please comment. Mike is commenting away. Frank has made some comments. I always enjoy that, and I always love hearing it. But I'm also interested in hearing those who don't agree with the Second Amendment. I want to hear what you have to say. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing something because I've read the legislation, A11148, the Assembly Bill on Red Flag Laws. Please look it up. S09191, the State Assembly Bill. State Senate Bill by Parker. Please look it up. Tell me where I'm wrong. I'm here. I've been on for over an hour. I'm still waiting. I want to hear those comments. Tell me how I misunderstand that a woman with fewer options is somehow safer. Please tell me, explain that to me. Tell me how criminals, or excuse me, legal adults, legal law-abiding citizens that own firearms, not having access to those firearms is somehow going to stop a mass shooting. Please explain that to me. I want to hear that argument. Tell me where I'm wrong. In a state, New York State, that is known for massive levels of corruption, especially over the last 8 years. I won't even get into the Tammany Hall years. We're talking about right now, modern history, last 8 years, massive billion dollar corruption at every level of our government. How many state assembly members, how many state senate members, how many members of Congress have been removed in the last 8 years alone because of corruption and misdeeds in New York State alone? Please tell me how the red flag legislation coupled with Mr. Parker's social media bill, tell me if when they pass, and they will pass in January, probably the second or third week, tell me how this will not be abused in a state known for its massive political abuse. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that New York State will never abuse Second Amendment rights. Tell me that it will never abuse the ability to know everything you've said on social media to everyone you've said it to, and every response they made in private messages not meant for the public. Tell me that they will not abuse that. Tell me that a state where we have Kirsten Gillibrand and Governor Cuomo both vying for the Democratic National nomination for president in 2020, a party that, according to Tom Perez, the Democratic National Committee chairman, has said that they are becoming democratic socialists and want to become more like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and go to socialism. So they are running to the left. And we have two major figures in our state government that are looking to become the leaders of that run to the left. Tell me how neither of them will stop this legislation and or allow it to be abused. Tell me how they're not going to do that. As they run to the left, which is saying overall that they hate anyone having a firearm except the government, and that everyone who has a firearm is some level of dangerous. These are the same people in California, Representative Eric Swalwell, who said that not only will they take away the firearms under his, if he could have his druthers, that they will take away firearms by force if necessary. These are the same people under former Justice John Paul Stevens has said that they should revoke the Second Amendment. This is the movement. They constantly tell me, well, Mike, I've heard many people say, no one's coming for your firearms. No one's trying to take your guns. You are lying. Either you are lying about that or you have no idea what is the legislation out there and what they are doing and what they are actively saying. Yes, they are. Both by denial of access as well as removal if you have ownership. We're talking about between these two bills, with Kevin Parker's bill that denies me the access to have a firearm and potentially opens me up to other violations of law that I would never voluntarily put myself into, that I have no control over, that can easily be abused at any point in time by multiple layers of government. That's a problem. And they couple that with another legislation that punishes me without ever violating the law, without ever committing a crime. How is this a positive thing? I don't understand. And I would love to hear anyone on the progressive far left explain this to me and tell me how I'm misunderstanding this, how I have gotten this wrong. And I want to hear them tell me how no one should be concerned, how no one should be afraid, how this is not possible. Because every time I've heard it's not possible, it happens. I've documented it many, many times. And I know people are saying, Mike, you just don't get it. Please tell me how I should get it. Explain it to me. Send me a text. Call. I'm here. Leave me a comment. When you see the YouTube video, comment on there. When you see the podcast, comment there. When you see it on my website, comment there. I want to hear this. Please explain it to me. Please. Because it doesn't make sense. Mike Marshall mentions are setting up fees that are prohibitive, making it so you cannot afford to own a firearm. That's right. That's right. And again, and I have a great associate, Mike Woodward, who I'll be speaking with a little bit later this afternoon. We'll be taping an episode of the SUNY Broom Republicans podcast, which I do recommend people to check out, especially if you're younger, if you're in college. He'll be there with my associate, Zach Allen. We'll be talking a little bit, and that's a different podcast. But he made a wonderful observation. And he's the one, and to be honest, I didn't think of it, but he's the one who brought up to me that the racism in gun ownership is to prevent those who are minorities and those who are poor from having firearms. As I mentioned, the cost, $600. It's prohibitive. It's meant to stop you from having a firearm. Kevin Parker, and by the way, just so people know, Kevin Parker is one of the most racist state senators, and I have to mention it. It's one of the most racist. In 2010, he came out right that based on political preferences, he believes that if you're a Republican, you're a force of evil. He said that. CBS News reported this, and I have a link to it. Look at the article, which is here. I quote it, and I link to the actual article. It was also covered by the New York Times, that he has stated that if you're a Republican, you're a white supremacist, and that he believes that you're a force of evil. That's what he believes. And I don't know how he would think that I, as a conservative Republican, am a white racist. I don't know how he gets to that, or a white supremacist, which is news to me, and it's a shock to my mom, I'm sure, and my dad as well. But let's look at it from this. He's saying that, well, we're the evil people, but meanwhile, he's helping to suppress and deny women the right to protect themselves from rape, because that is a direct consequence of his law. It's crazy. Oh, hang on. Hello, this is Michael. Can you hear me?
Hey, Michael. It's Mike Marshall.
Hey, Mike Marshall, and I'm glad that you called in. And just so people know, we just got in. As you can see, the phone number on the screen. Mike's calling in. He's talking with us. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, I was just calling in to comment on what you were just saying about. I'm trying to remember his name. The guy that wants to pass the
Kevin Parker
social media search legislation.
Senator Kevin Parker.
Yes. The fact that he is trying to push that all conservatives are white supremacists and racists and so forth, right there in and of itself just shows that he doesn't want people to have open dialogues between the parties. He's trying to further divide us by making anybody that is conservative look as if they are racist, or that they are just out to prevent you from. I'm trying to think of how to word it.
Well, while you think of that, let me give people a little bit of background about this. And again, this is all published in New York Times, CBS News. I have links to them in the article. Please look it up. But what he was so upset about white Republicans who are white or white supremacists and evil. And if you're a Republican, regardless of color, that you're evil, that he had to be forcibly removed and restrained in the state Senate. So when I say that he is a racist, that is where I get that determination from his reported 2010 outbursts and actions and statements. So it's fair for people to say this. This is on the record. It is not something that is not an impression, that is not an interpretation. And we see in this legislation, he is again attacking another group he does not like, who tend to be more Republican conservative, although Democrats do also own firearms. But go on, Mike.
Right. Well, that's essentially okay. He is trying to paint his opposition as being firmly against anybody that is of color or so forth, as white supremacists and so forth. But I know a lot of people that are of various ethnic groups that do have conservative values. Okay, so that statement in and of itself is an outright lie.
Oh, absolutely.
And the fact that he is actually trying to push that agenda as being a person of color means that he is just trying to play the race card when it has no validity.
Well, let me defend something for Kevin S. Parker and his supporters. Mr. Parker has not mentioned race at this time. This is my understanding. It's a full understanding of his history and who he is, which the public should know when considering his law and what may be motivating him. So I can't say that he's said that directly in this law. I don't know that he would deny it, but I can't attribute that to him, and I don't. So I want to be clear about that, and I do want to be fair in my reporting or discussion about it.
Right.
Let me ask a question, Mike. And I know you speak to the Liberty First Foundation, which is L1F.us. People can look it up and check it out. Let me ask you, in the 50,000 some odd members there, the people that you know, is there anything that I've talked about so far that doesn't make sense, that your members would say, Mike, I disagree with, that people who are not supporters of the Second Amendment that you're aware of would say, I've missed something, that I'm wrong, I misunderstand something?
No, I have not come across anything that you have presented that any of the members of my organization would disagree with. And actually, you've presented it very well. You've actually brought up a lot of issues that I actually did not know about, even though I have been following this since it broke. And it's just another way of trying to, if not make it harder for people to get access to the tools that they need to protect themselves, to silence them. Okay? It's not only just a threat on the Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and various other amendments. It is a direct attack on the First Amendment as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just the very fact of, if you want to maintain your right to have a handgun permit that you've worked so hard, paid so much more for, you have to silence what you're saying. And you have to be very careful about what you're saying. And that, in and of itself, is a direct violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah, no matter who you're saying it to.
Exactly.
Which is absolutely prohibited. In fact, it was, I think it was 1972 or 1977, Justice Thurgood Marshall, who said that in one of his cases on this First Amendment, he mentioned that the government cannot compel an individual to support a government position. The government cannot force you to believe what it wants you to believe, nor can it deny you the freedom to believe whatever you want and say it. And people can look that up. I forget the exact court case, but it was a Supreme Court case by both in 72 or 77, because it was both Justice Thurgood Marshall and also Chief Justice Berger that had made similar comments saying the government can't do this, and yet here it is, the government's trying to do it.
Well, they've also made statements to the fact of guns in common ownership. Okay, Citrano, I'm trying to remember what state it. Citrano versus Pennsylvania, I think it is. It was stated out there that any weapon that could be classified as bearable is protected under the Second Amendment.
Yeah, the Second Amendment doesn't define what is a arm. It says you may be armed.
Doesn't.
So, I mean, whether that's a knife, a sword, pitchforks, even in those days, and I think Frank had a great presentation on Frank Johnson, also a member of the Liberty First Foundation and a friend of mine. Frank had mentioned that even in the Middle Ages, they had, or excuse me, not Middle Ages, at the time of the Declaration of Independence, they had firearms that could fire multiple rounds. Not quite the machine guns of our day today, which are generally not available to the public, but did fire and repeating fire. So it's not a brand new thing to say we have semi-automatic firearms. They had versions similar to that back then.
No, it's not. And the very fact that people are trying to say that this is not what the founding fathers wanted or could have conceived of when they added the Second Amendment to the Constitution is irrelevant. Okay, the founding fathers wanted us to have the same weaponry that the government had access to in order to be able to stand up against government in the cases where it becomes tyrannous. And that was the whole purpose behind the Second Amendment being added to the Constitution.
Well,
the very fact that they are trying to eliminate that right of ours and suppress it is indicative that they are trying to become a tyrannous society where they rule over all and they limit our freedoms and they grant our freedoms as they see fit. And that is completely contrary to what the Constitution is.
Oh, absolutely. And I think most people would agree that Governor Cuomo is very tyrannical in his rule. And consistently, we've seen that because of such a tyrannical rule, even when we had a state senate that was run by Republicans, that led to over 1.2 million people, actually possibly 1.5 million by latest stats, have left the state, taking $1.3 trillion worth of revenues and about 20,000 businesses, which is why New York State's in such debt and in such problems. And he's looking to make it even worse. So so do you agree with this, Mike, that what I'm talking about affects not just firearm owners, but their families, their friends, their kids? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Okay, and on a broader note, okay, once they get this legislation passed, if they pass it on the Second Amendment, what's to stop them from passing it on, say, somebody that's going to adopt a child?
Oh, they would expand
or
it to
somebody
everything.
that is applying for a driver's license.
Well, it sets a precedence legally. Once the
Exactly.
precedence is set that, oh, the government found something, and again, that's the abuse. So I can look into your Facebook and I can find anything that people, again, and that's why I mentioned the baby picture, because it's so ridiculous, except according to the law, the letter of the law, it is a violation. It is child pornography. You having your own baby picture with you nude as a baby is child pornography for you having it on your computer, and God forbid you share it. And that's
Right.
considered child pornography. And the government can charge you with that if they want to, which is terrifying. And this is the problem. It's something so simple that no one would think of. You wouldn't think that's violating the law. It's ridiculous to think of that, except if someone wants to abuse the power of government, they can, and this allows them to do that.
Well, that again is another way that they are abusing the power of government. They are supposed to be representing us and protecting our rights, and more what we're finding is that they are actually violating our rights and taking them away from us as we go through history.
Let me ask you something, Mike. As I mentioned earlier in this, that I've reached out to many organizations, yours as well, and I reached out to many in the news media. And what I've been seeing is there is no one out there who has put out, and I could be missing stuff and you reach more people than I do, but I see no one who has actually gone through and said, here's what the bill says, Here's what it functionally does, and here are the consequences. And as far as I know, especially with the major news media, they refuse to tell people that. They won't even tell people the name of the bill or where to find it. Am I wrong?
No, you are not. You're actually very accurate on that. Of the reports that I have read on it, they actually very briefly touch upon what they are even trying to do. Okay, and basically all they're doing is they're saying that in order to maintain your handgun permits, you are going to be required to
Give the access.
voluntarily give them access to your social media accounts.
Got to say, quote unquote, voluntary. It's not voluntary when
Right.
it's a mandate.
Right.
If that's the condition that allows you to exercise your rights, it's not a voluntary action.
No, it is not. Okay, and as you said, it is a mandate, but they try to guise it as a voluntary action, just because you're applying for that permit. Well, it isn't a voluntary action. Anytime that you are trying to exercise a right and you are required to do something in order to exercise that right, it is now no longer a right. It's an oppression.
Oh, I agree with that. Let me ask, just so people know, and you don't have, please don't give the exact address, but what part of New York are you in?
I am about 50 miles from the Canadian border,
Okay.
right by Champlain, Lake Champlain.
Okay. And is this a big issue in your area? Have people, now that they're learning about it, and I assume they've just started hearing about it, are you hearing a lot of feedback on it? I know.
Actually, most people in my area do not know about this yet.
Oh, look at that.
A lot of members of my group are just now finding out about it,
Okay.
as well. So this isn't just something that is, it's actually being very well suppressed. And I believe the reason why they are suppressing it is just like like they did with the SAFE Act. And what they will probably do with SAFE Act 2 is they're trying to pass it without anybody knowing about it.
Well, I think,
And once it gets passed, then it's almost too late. Now you've got to go through all kinds of challenges and so forth. The SAFE Act's been challenged multiple times, and it's been in existence since 2012. And who knows how long it's going to take before a court finally hears it, and it is actually repealed for its constitutionality.
well, when I spoke to, and I got the chance to speak with Colonel Oliver North of the NRA in person, and I was the only one in the room of all the news media to ask him about the red flag legislation, which he stated the NRA emphatically is against it and is willing to go to the Supreme Court, but that takes about 7 years minimally, and that's after it's gone through the court system. So you're looking at roughly about 10 years, realistically, before the red flag legislation gets to the courts, potentially, because even the SAFE Act, which was passed January of 2013, hasn't gotten into the final Supreme Court. And that's been, what is it now, 6 years. So it's still waiting to see if that will be found constitutional or not. And I think
Right.
the red flag too, I think this is part of it. I think that what Governor Cuomo, because he's been very vague on what it will actually be, is a compilation of bills like putting in the red flag legislation and adding in State Senator Kevin Parker's social media bill, putting them all together under this one big umbrella and say, well, there's the SAFE Act 2. You're going to be safe, go to sleep at night, and people are still going to die. Women will still get raped, and people will still get the abuse of government without ever being safer, just with less freedom.
Right. And that will, in turn, prompt them to say, well, the SAFE Act 2 is not enough, so we need to go a step further.
And it's a repeating system. We need more government. Government has to do more. Government has to do more because it didn't work. And that's one of my big peeves about all the gun legislation, restriction laws, all the gun control. We've been doing it for 40 years plus. I mean, realistically, we can go back to 1934. We can even go before that. But with all the gun control laws we put out there, no one has become safer. People still get murdered with firearms as well as knives and hands, and usually more so by hands and knives and cars and so forth. And it's always failed. Always empirically, look at the data, look at the actual numbers. It has always failed. Why do we keep going back to this? Because they're playing with people's emotions and saying, you'll feel safe. You're going to feel safe. And quite honestly, I could care, I don't know, maybe this is me, Mike. Maybe you're the members of the Liberty First Foundation or other individuals may disagree with me. I don't know, so I'll ask. But I personally can't stand the idea of someone say, you should feel safe. I want to be safe.
Well, that's just it. Okay, and motion is just that. Okay, most emotions aren't based in reality or in facts.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's one of the reasons why many people try to use emotions to promote their positions, and it's very hard to argue against an emotion, no response, with facts.
True. Mike, let me ask one last thing. If you can do me a favor, and then I want to make sure if the line is free, other people can try and call in if they wish. And obviously, everyone's open to send comments, both during this or if you see it afterwards. Would you do me a favor and ask the members of your organization and those you know, ask them a simple question for me, for the women in particular. Okay. Do they agree that government should limit their options to protect themselves from rape and murder with this kind of law? Do they think that's a good thing and will make them safer? Or is having more options, which includes potentially having a licensed firearm that they are trained in, I do want to emphasize that, do they think that would make them safer? Which one makes them more safe? Government taking away their options or having more options? Can you do that for me?
Yes, I will.
And
I will actually make that a priority, put it on a post, and set up a poll, see what we can determine, get the data.
Absolutely. I would love to see the response on that. That's 50,000 plus members, plus any other organizations. I would love to see that because no one has done, as far as I know, no one has asked women that. And I think it's important. And there's a segment of this, a segment that, Kevin S. Parker, Governor Cuomo, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they're all targeting women as a group and saying, well, emotionally, you're going to be fine. I want to hear what women have to say. I don't think people ask enough, and I want to ask, and I think it would be interesting.
I'll also reach out to some women's-only groups that I know about as well and see if I can get them to ask the same questions.
Absolutely. And definitely come back on and let us know about the answer, no matter what it is, because, again, it's about knowing the answer, not, I don't try and presume. I just want to hear what people have to say.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
All right. Let me, anything else before I let you go?
Nope, that would be it. Thank you very much.
And thank you for calling in. One of the first people who called in while I do this live, so I love it and I appreciate it, and I thank you for that, okay?
No, thank you, and have a great day, and keep up the great work.
Always trying. Thank you. All right, folks. So that was one of our listeners here, and I thank him for calling in. That was Mike Marshall of the Liberty First Foundation. And please, oops. No, it's not playing. Well, there was supposed to be applause going on here. Don't know why it's not. Oh, there it is. Is that it now? Nope. Okay. Well, technology messes around with me sometimes. So we do what we can. Oops. Ooh. Had a little feedback there. But I thank Mike Marshall for getting in touch and sharing with us his thoughts and his views and with the Liberty First Foundation. And by the way, let me just put up a link on that so people can see that, and you'll be able to see it online as well. I can't type right now. And that should be up so people will be able to see it. Okay. And you'll be able to see that on Facebook. And so I just wanted people to be able to have that. So I know we're coming a little bit closer to the end. It's a little bit extended here today, but I think it's an important issue. And I think there's the ramifications, and that's what I believe the news media should, in fact, do. They should tell people about the ramifications of what these things are and how it's going to affect their lives completely. How is it going to affect women? How is it affecting minorities? How is it affecting people who don't support the Second Amendment? How it allows the government to abuse its power, and even having the potential to abuse its power terrifies me and is something that we should be aware of and stop the government from being able to do. And I think that's very important. I think it's critically important because maybe Governor Cuomo doesn't do it, but the next guy does. Or maybe your local sheriff or a local judge decides that because they don't like you, that they can use this law to punish you, or use it as part of the red flag legislation to punish you. This is the problem. This is a major problem. And I think when news media does not address this, they're doing a disservice to the public. By the way, I should mention as well, I am in discussion with a local in the southern tier of New York, a local news organization, potentially, depending on whether the news editor agrees or not, I may be interviewed about this subject and its consequences. So hopefully I'll be able to share that with the public in general, because that is major news media, and I think there's a lot that people are not aware of. And I'm always happy, by the way, if there are any students out there, any organizations, if you want me to come and speak about the Second Amendment, to speak about this. I do speeches often. I've been at many of them across New York State, mostly throughout the southern tier and central New York. But I'm always happy to speak about this and speak about the consequences and answer people's questions, because I have spent well over a decade on this issue. And looking at the aspects of laws and the consequences of them, and I'm happy to share that with people always. So just in case someone was saying, gee, I would love to have him come and talk to us and answer our questions in person for an hour or two, I'll be happy to do that. Get in touch with me. I'll be able to help you with that. But let me see, is there anyone else? Please, people, you can always call in. You can leave your comments. I know it's Saturday, everyone's out shopping, and a lot of people haven't been able to come in. Some people are coming a little bit late. Matter of fact, I just want to share with you a 20-second clip of the new opening. I do want to hear what people think about the new opening as well. I want to share that with you right now. Hang on.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Do let me know if you like that, if you enjoy that, if that can make it better, if it works for you well. I've already had a couple of people say that it might be better for when I'm doing a one-on-one interview, but you never know. Let me know what you think. We're always looking to improve and get better. I've covered a lot on this issue, and I think there's a lot more that, believe it or not, there's a lot more that can be discussed about it. The impact and the way it can be abused, the way this subject is shaping to deny people their rights terrifies me. And it's just getting worse. It's not getting better. And I think that we're getting a disservice when we have those 30-second sound bites, that's why this is called No Sound Bites Allowed. This is not a conversation that you can have in 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, it's very difficult to say, women will lose their options. Minorities will be denied their freedoms and their rights. That this is an abuse-prone... Actually, I am saying it in 30 seconds. This is an abuse-prone issue. And in saying it like that, it's just real easy for someone to say, you just don't understand, or you're just overreaching. This is not nearly as bad as it sounds. You know what? we've just spent 2 hours talking about exactly how it is that bad and how it could be even worse than what I'm imagining. But maybe you don't agree, and that's okay. This is America. We have the freedom to agree or disagree. We have the freedom to have a conversation and say, you know what, maybe there's a middle ground. I don't see it at this moment. I don't see it in this legislation, not at all. But you know what? That's just me. There are 19 million people in New York State. If 19 million people read the legislation, not the headlines, not a 30-second soundbite, not a tweet, but actually read the bills, looked into it and said, hey, here's my question. Could this happen? How can we make it better? I guarantee we'll get to a lot better law, which not everyone will agree with, but we'll have a much better law that actually protects people while respecting the freedoms and the rights of American citizens and those in New York State far more than this bill by Kevin S. Parker, by the red flag legislation from Governor Cuomo and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who have agendas that do not serve the best interest of the public, in my opinion. But I am always open to hear, what did I get wrong? What did I miss? What should be in this discussion that has not been? Because we deserve, you deserve, the right and the ability to have a clear, full, honest discussion about what's going on with your life as this is being affected. So with that said, it's been about 2 hours. I do have I do invite people to come and check out. A little bit later today, you'll hear the SUNY Broome Republicans podcast with my hosts, Zach Allen and Michael Woodward of the SUNY Broome Republicans Club at SUNY Broome College, talking to those who are a little bit younger, both on this and other subjects. We're always happy to have you around. You'll see that. Please, if you missed this or any part of it, you can go on to see the video podcast. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is mvconsulting.inc, and you'll be able to see it on YouTube in full, no edits, and you'll be able to see that whole thing. Or you can listen to the audio-only podcast at the vosspolitical.podbean.com, as you see down there. Or you can even go over to the mvoss.com website, and that'll be able to give you access to it so that you can hear it audio. So if you're driving around, you can drive around and listen to it as well. Or as you're doing the holiday shopping, you can have that and listen to it if you can't see the video as well. We try and make it as easy as possible for people to hear what's going on and make your comments. And if, as you're going through and doing your holiday shopping, if you decide, hey, I'd like to donate $1 or $2, please do. It helps pay the bills, and I could use the help. It's expensive, folks, but that's an option, and it doesn't matter. Whether you do or don't, I'm here. I've been here for 12 years, and I'm going to keep going, and we're going to keep talking, and we're going to try and change this because this is not a done deal. We have the power. Remember that. Anyone who tells you you don't, they have a political agenda and they're using you. You have the power, always. And folks, I hope you're going to have a great rest of the weekend. I hope the holiday shopping goes well. I hope everyone will be in warmth, well fed, and have a great holiday season filled with love, with people that you haven't seen, your family, your friends, all around you. I wish that for everyone, and I look forward to hearing your comments and speaking with you again very, very soon. Thank you, everybody.